Throughout this video, we will be discussing grapes throughout dates, and more specifically, the effects of wine in the ancient Greek, Roman, and Middle Age eras. In this section, we will be discussing wine in ancient Greece. Main points we will be touching on include evidence of the first traces of wine production, the cultural influence of wine on the ancient Roman deity, the god of wine, wine-centered festivities, and the symposia.
Archaeologists discovered clay wine presses, wine cups, and grape seeds dating back to the mid-3rd century BC on the island of Crete. These breakthrough discoveries emphasize the important role wine played in the ancient Greek culture. Wine was embodied in the religious workings of ancient Greek society. Dionysus, the god of wine and fertility, was one of the most worshipped Greek gods. He was the son of Zeus and Semele. Zeus was a god of the sky and ruler of Olympian gods, while Semele was a princess and the only mortal to parent a god. Dionysus was considered a patron of the arts, inspiring artists, philosophers, and the lives of everyday people. Festivities were held in honor of Dionysus to celebrate wine. This festival came to be known as Anthesteria, or Festival of Flowers. These festivals may have acquired their name through the notorious reputation that Greek wine had a flowery aroma. In addition to these events, ancient Greeks enjoyed putting on symposia, also known as a gathering to engage in intellectual conversations. While attending these symposias, Greeks preferred to consume freshly harvested wine in efforts to gain intellectual clarity and spiritual awareness. In order to help enforce their strict practices of consuming in moderation, Greeks would distill their wine with water, believing that by doing so they were increasing the quality of the wine, while limiting their intake of alcohol.
Moving on to the next section, where we will be discussing wine in ancient Rome. Main points include ancient Greeks' influence on Roman culture and traditions, Romans' view on intoxication, wine as a commodity, the shift in Roman diet, rising wine demand causing increase in farming, the change in growing techniques, and the fall of the Roman Empire causing wine to lose its prominence. Moving on to the next section, where we will be discussing
Ancient Greeks were the pioneers of winemaking. Therefore, it is to no surprise that even after the fall of Greece, as the Roman Empire began to rise, the early Roman people acquired very similar, if not the same, techniques for growing and harvesting wine. Not only did the Romans practice similar farming techniques, but they also followed the Greek tradition of distilling their wine with water to create a more pleasant drinking experience, while at the same time adhering to their strong belief of drinking in moderation. The Romans, however, believed that if you disregarded drinking in moderation or drank pure wine, you were barbaric or uncivilized. Romans also enjoyed putting on celebrations. However, their gatherings were mostly used to portray their wealth, power, and prominence in society. At this point in Rome's history, wine is beginning to be seen as a common commodity in daily life. Opposed to ancient Greece, now men and women from all social classes could be found drinking wine. It was even thought that slaves could receive a gallon of wine as their weekly ration in order to preserve good health. Romans went through a dramatic diet change around 2nd century BC by changing their meals from porridge and gruel, a flour, rice, or oat combination mixed with water, to a mostly bread and wheat-based diet. With the new bread diet in place, Romans began pairing wine with their meals now more than ever. This caused widespread planting and farming of grapes in order to match the high demands of the Roman civilization. The Romans also experienced technical advances in wine production, as well as a rapid flood of awareness for winemaking. Vineyards began looking for ways to lower the cost of producing wine while keeping the good quality, and still filling the rising demands. This led to a shift in growing methods, where Romans would now prune the vines, training them to grow upon lower support structures, making the harvesting process much simpler and functional. In 476 CE, the Roman Empire was overthrown by Grammatic leader Odoacer, the first barbarian to rule in Rome. The fall of the Roman Empire contributed significantly to the decline in wine's prominence leading into the Middle Ages.
In our last section, we will be discussing wine in the Middle Ages. The main points will include the downfall of the Roman Empire that leads into the Middle Ages, the decline in demand for wine, the halted trade that allows for monks to cultivate the wine industry, and other forms of alcohol that begin to emerge.
The well-known time period in history, most commonly referred to as the Middle Ages, is the almost 1,000-year gap between the fall of the Roman Empire and the Renaissance period. During this time, wine began to lose its novelty. As production decreased, it became less of a priority to civilians. Not to mention that without the Roman Empire offering protection, the people in the region were no longer safe. Deteriorating roads made trading once common goods, such as wine, dangerous and hardly ever an option. Monasteries served as shelters for storing wine, while dedicated monks within them kept wine safe during such a dark age in history. Not only did monks keep wine safe, but they sought to perfect the winemaking process, using only high-quality ingredients. By doing so, the monks created the finest wine possible at the time. Due to the monks' strong passion for wine, they were hesitant as to whom they would allow to understand their complex techniques of winemaking. Simply by having the proper environment and tools, monks dominated in the crafting of wine, owning the finest vineyards in the Middle Ages. As previously mentioned, long-distance trade was rare at the time. Therefore, wine was mostly made and consumed locally. Despite the monks' outstanding job in keeping wine prominent, without trade, people were unable to purchase wine as often as they were in the preceding years. This contributed immensely to the growing popularity of mead, rustic beers, and wild fruit wines among Celtics, Anglo-Saxons, Germans, and Scandinavians. However, wine only remained the dominating drink of the people in the more romantic countries such as Italy, Spain, and France.
As expressed in this video, wine was extremely influential throughout history in a variety of ways, affecting each era differently. Despite the time that has passed, wine is still influencing the cultures around us today.